Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Thursday. It kind of feels like it should be Friday today, doesn't it? What's happening? Maybe we should do that 4-day work week. Who was experimenting with that? Was it Sweden? Or no, was it Iceland?
I think, yeah.
Yeah, I think Iceland was experimenting with a 4-day work week, and I think we should try that out and just see
For
how.
a month.
What's that?
We should try that out just for a month.
Why a month? Why not 3 or 4 months?
One whole semester.
To be honest, I think it will happen, but it's going to be a slow transition. And sometimes those Nordic countries and Iceland, they're a little bit further ahead of countries like us. So I think we'll get there, but it won't be next year. It'll probably be just when I retire. They'll switch to 4-day work weeks. I'll be like, okay. Let's see who's here. Reza's here. Good morning, Reza. Sean is here. Good morning, Sean. Hamad is here. Good morning, Hamad. Victoria is here. Good morning, Victoria. Basil's here. Good morning, Basil. And Oasis is here. Good morning, Oasis. So, yesterday, what were we talking about? Oh, yes. We were talking about white supremacism, right? And so, again, we said that white supremacism in part comes out of messages that circulate through Western society that kind of subconsciously or kind of implicitly imply to people that the white person's experience is kind of the normal experience, right? The default experience, the way things really are, right? We white people, we see things the way they are. Other races, they, see a version of something. I'm not really sure how to explain this, but yeah, and we get this message through all kinds of different media, right? And so even though we're kind of getting all these messages of superiority, even though white people have social and institutional and historical power here in Canada and the US, we still find that there are some pretty intense people who believe that white people are under attack somehow, right? That in fact white people are the victims. And that seems like a strange kind of perspective given what we already know, would you say? Kind of strange, right? And so we read this article yesterday, and we talked about a few of these answers, and I'd like to just kind of see if we can go through them today here. So, what did we say was one of the major causes of domestic terrorism and hate crime in the States today? Yeah, white supremacy, right? And again, I said that was probably, counter to what most people would expect, right? And again, if you kind of asked if when most people in North America hear, the word terrorist, they don't picture a white person. They usually picture a Middle Eastern person, maybe a guy with a beard, maybe a Muslim, something like that, right? But again, that if you look at the history and you look at the numbers, you'll see that that's really not the case, right? Certainly the attack on the World Trade Center in 9/11 in 2001, that had a big effect on the sort of I guess the worldview of Americans. Canadians a little bit too, but Americans really had their world shaken up by that attack, and kind of as a result, we have this kind of stereotypical image of the terrorist as being, at the very least, not white, right? But again, if you look at the history of the U.S., you'll see that most terrorism has been perpetrated by white people, right? And people fighting for the rights and the freedoms of white people, right? Or fighting for their vision of a white America kind of thing. Let me just show you a slide here. This is kind of the slide that I wanted to show you yesterday and I didn't. The fact that my head is right by fascism doesn't mean that I'm a fascist. So I'm actually just going to move down here because I'm a little more on the left wing, so that's probably a more comfortable place for me to be. Um, but this is what I was talking about yesterday, the political spectrum. And you can think about the left and the right spectrum, or the left wing and the right wing, as people's ideas about what role they think the government should play in their lives. Okay? And so, like I said yesterday, people who are out on the left here, we can think about their social and their economic lives. So people out on the left tend to like governments that provide lots of social programs, right? So like maybe free medical care like we have here in Canada, mostly free. Things like old age pensions and retirement pensions, disability pensions, maybe free university in some countries, maybe subsidized daycare for children, or maybe even free daycare. Those are all kind of left-wing programs, right? And so the people on the left are kind of comfortable with a lot of government involvement in their economic lives, right? Lots of support, lots of social programs. Taxes tend to be higher though, because you have to pay for all those things somehow, right? But this is kind of, people on the left are more comfortable with government involvement in their economic life. But on the left wing, you also see that people are less concerned or less comfortable with the government dictating their social lives, okay? So people on the left are kind of liberal, right? So they tend to be more accepting of things like homosexuality, gay marriage, alternative genders, right? Like we've talked about. They tend to be more accepting of immigration and diversity. So they tend to be multiculturalism. They tend to be kind of more open to social diversity, right? And they don't really want the government, trying to define who the people are that way. But if you go out onto the right, you'll see kind of the opposite, right? So economically speaking, people on the right, they kind of like the government to stay out of their business, right? They don't like paying for a lot of social programs because they think that people should take care of themselves, right? And so if you want to go to university, get a job and save your money, right? That's more of a right-wing thing to say, right? So they like lower taxes, they like fewer social programs, they like the government to kind of do, keep order, but then basically stay out of people's lives and let people take care of themselves. Right? But on the other hand, people on the right wing tend to be a little more, they want the government to kind of protect their social lives, okay? So people on the right tend to be a little more traditional, right? They want to kind of keep things as they are, right? They want to maintain their traditions, maintain their the status quo. Sometimes people on the right tend to be more religious than people on the left, but not always. People on the right are because they're kind of guardians of tradition and they want to sort of maintain things the way they are, sometimes they're less accepting of things like immigration, sometimes less accepting of multiculturalism, sometimes less accepting of, different sexualities, different genders, gay marriage, abortion, things like that, right? And sometimes that stems from just being kind of conservative and traditional. Sometimes there's a religious element for people on the right as well. It kind of depends. Everyone's a little different. And you can also be a little bit of a mix of both, right? So some people can be socially liberal, right? So very, kind of accepting of diversity and multiculturalism and all that stuff. But they can be economically conservative, right? They can say, yeah, but I want a small government with low taxes and everybody takes care of themselves, right? So you can you can be a little bit of both. You can be kind of close to the center. And in all honesty, in most kind of, I was going to say normal countries, but there's no normal countries. In a country like Canada or the US or Britain or France or something like that, most people are actually probably in most countries around the world, most people are in the center, right? Most people don't have extreme political views. Most people just want a comfortable life and they want to work and feed their kids and go to school and enjoy their lives, and that's about it, right? So in most countries you'll find that most people sit kind of around the center, right? And so here I've got the Democrats and the Republicans from the U.S. political parties. Although again, those two sides are kind of splitting out, right? They're kind of leaning. The Democrats are starting to lean further left into socialism, and the conservatives are starting to, or the Republicans are starting to become more conservative. And to say they're kind of flirting with fascism is a little bit maybe too much, but they're certainly leaning further right than they ever have. And again, like I said, when you go all the way out to the sort of extreme ends, that's where you get to fascist dictatorships like Hitler and Mussolini and guys like that. And if you go all the way out into the left, you get into a communist state.
So, sorry, for the Democrats, who's the leader?
Right now?
Yeah.
Well, Joe Biden was their presidential candidate, right? So it's him and Kamala Harris, who are kind of the heads of the Democratic Party. The Republican Party, Trump is still kind of the head of it, although now that he's out of government. What's that?
I'm pretty sure he's out for
Well, I don't know. He keeps talking about running again, but
Didn't they ban him?
only from Twitter.
No, like wasn't there or something?
No, he is. Let's see. So they impeached him, but they didn't go so far as to ban him from running for office in the future. So the Senate could have done that. They could have punished him for his impeachment, but they did not. So he's free to run again. Currently, I think the Trump organization is involved in some sort of legal proceedings. Those legal proceedings will go on for a long time. I doubt that they will be able to go after Trump himself. I think he's probably insulated himself from everything, and so, I think some of the directors of his companies might go down for this, and the company might have to declare bankruptcy or something, but I think he'll be okay. So he's free to run again. And we'll see. It would have been, I think it would have been, well, let me ask you, do you think he'll run again? Don't know.
I don't think so. Like, people won't work for him at all. Like he knows that.
They won't work for him?
Yeah, they know.
I don't know. I think the Republican Party has not, like they were kind of in step with him all the way, right? And then when he left, they didn't kind of turn and change their policies. They're going in the same direction as they were under Trump. So I think it would be quite natural for him to kind of slide back in there. But
won't he be like, how do you say, a bad fortune, something like that, because people already hate it?
well, some people hate him, right? But millions of people voted for him, right? He got, let's see, I don't know, tens of millions of people voted for Trump in the last election. It was not a landslide, right? It was a reasonably close election. And so, yeah, there's tons of people who hate him, right? And I'll put my hand up in that category. But there's lots of people who voted for him because they either love him or they don't like him, but they think he's a better option. So I don't know, he's kind of defied expectations, right? He's, when he first announced his candidacy, it was like, as if, right? As if this guy could win. And then he won, right? And, he, nothing stuck to him, right? No matter what he said or did, nothing took him down, right? And so, I'm kind of reluctant to count him out because he always, every time you think that'll never happen, he can't do that, or people won't stand for that, and then they do. So I hope he doesn't run again.
I think like I read on social media, the next election, probably The Rock is gonna win for this one.
Oh, The Rock?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd vote for him.
Because people are telling him to run for president.
Yeah, but like is Hollywood actor, like, is that, are those good credentials for the President of the United States?
You need to have the education. You need to learn politics since you are a teenager to get completely familiar
Yeah,
with
like,
history.
yeah, I don't know, like, because not to say that I think this is true, but if you look at someone like Joe Biden has been like, he was working in the Senate before I was born. Like he's paid his dues, right? He's put in his time. He's worked his way up, right? He's been, congressman and senator, and I don't know if he's been a governor or not, but he's been vice president for Barack Obama, and he's got the experience, right? He's got the resume to go with that job, right? And like I love The Rock. He seems like a wonderful human being, right? But like, you know, is being in a bunch of Fast and Furious movies, is that, was he in any of them?
Yeah.
Okay. Like, being in a bunch of movies, is that a good resume for President of the United States? I don't know. I like him, but I just don't know. I just don't know if that's a good fit, you know? But I don't know.
I see. But like, I think it's high time that countries start electing younger people for as a president rather than people who are like 60 plus.
Good morning. Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because people have, at least in the U.S. But yeah, we usually elect older people as for the top position, right? The people with the most experience. But I don't know, right? Like it makes, in some ways it makes sense, right? In some ways it makes sense to elect those experienced people. But why do you think that younger people should be elected?
So if you want evolution, you won't get that from someone who's like really old.
Right.
You get that from the new generation.
Mm. So yeah, so the new ideas, the innovations, the change comes from young people, right? Which is very true. And actually, um, something else I wanted to say about this is that, we've got kind of conservatives and liberals, we've got kind of right wing and kind of left wing people, and often we see kind of a very predictable split. And so, like you mentioned, people on the left tend to be younger people, right? People who like change and diversity, and that they tend to be left wing. Left wing people tend to be younger because that's what young people want, right? They want change and new ideas and opportunity, right? But as people get older, they tend to lean over into the conservative side because they're established, right? And they don't want things to change. Sometimes old people get kind of stuck in their ways, right? They don't want things to change, and so they kind of become a little more conservative. So sometimes, good morning, sometimes you see a split between young people and old people. You often see a split between the urban and the rural, right? So people in cities tend to be more left wing. People out in the countryside tend to be more right wing. And I think that pattern holds up in probably most countries, is that the cities are where people are kind of, dynamic and open to change and kind of, exciting new ideas. Out in the country, people tend to be a little more conservative. They want to keep things the same, maybe not always, but I think that pattern is, you often see it, right?
So what if like the ones who are living in the rural areas, what if they're opposing the change because it's not benefiting them? It's benefiting the urban people
Yeah.
on the cost of the rural people.
Well, and that's another thing too, right? That's another layer, is that sometimes the focus is on the urban center, right? That's where the power is, that's where the money is. And so sometimes, yeah, the people out in the countryside either feel forgotten about, or in fact they are forgotten about, right? Is that something that you kind of feel is happening in your country, or is there a personal experience there?
No, I just saw a lot of movies.
Okay.
So like there's an ideology where like just to improve the city, they forget the people on the inside.
Yeah. And sometimes, to be honest, that happens a little bit in Canada as well, right? Because we have, there's Montreal, Toronto, and Vancouver, right? Mostly Toronto, and Montreal a little bit. And then sometimes the rest of the country kind of feels forgotten about, right? And granted, that's Montreal, Toronto, and Vancouver. That's where the money is. That's where the population is. That's where the sort of political things are happening. And yeah, when you go to rural Alberta or rural Saskatchewan, sometimes people feel forgotten about out there, and maybe sometimes they are, right? But I think that's true. I think that's true. So people, where I was going with all this has been interesting, but where I was kind of going with all this is that, yeah, the people on the kind of alt-right here are kind of people that lean further out than the Republicans, right? So they're kind of getting into fascist ideas, right? And maybe not so much in terms of economics, but in terms of the sort of involvement in people's social lives, right? And that's what we read about in the article yesterday, right? What these kind of white supremacists are definitely interested in preserving their race as they see it, right? And kind of maintaining power in the hands of white people, right, in their country. Sometimes non-white people are supposed to be subjugated, or sometimes they're supposed to be removed entirely, right? They are, generally opposed to, lots of the white supremacists we read about are quite religious, or to some degree religious. They're opposed to homosexuality and alternative genders and things like that. And so their movement is kind of mostly a social one. But there is an economic thing to it as well, which I will add in maybe in a little bit. But yeah, I wanted to put this up there because you'll often hear about, people on the right, people on the left, the alt-left, the alt-right, right-wing this, right-wing that. And so it's kind of nice to map it out so that you can kind of understand what people are talking about. And, when you hear people, those guys out on the left, they're really crazy or whatever, you'll actually kind of know what's being referred to, right? And now that we've kind of talked about this, do you know, I'm not going to ask you, but could you kind of put yourself on this continuum? Do you kind of know where you sit politically? Kind of? I'll show you. Me, I think, oh, there we go. Me, I think I'm kind of about here. Okay, maybe a little bit. Maybe a little bit back, right? So again, whoops, sorry about that. Yeah, I'm kind of on the left wing, right? I do like some. I guess I got to do it here. I do like some socialist ideas, right? So our healthcare system in Canada is a socialist idea, right? We all pay into it. We all get mostly free medical care. Wonderful, fantastic, love it, right? Socialist idea, but I'm up for it. So, but again, I don't lean too far to the left. I don't want extreme levels of socialism, right? I think that, capitalism, when it's regulated properly, is not too bad, right? Not that it's regulated properly right now. And again, I am very accepting of diversity, different sexualities, different genders, immigration, yay. I'm all for it, right? So I can kind of put myself on the spectrum here, but everyone is going to be somewhere different, but it's useful to think about kind of where you sit, right?
I think
Between social and liberal?
Yeah.
Yeah. And lots of people are kind of there in Canada too. So you'll have, you're in good company that way. Kind of what we're finding is that most people, I think on average, most Canadians lean a little bit to the left. Okay, and so, when they go to vote on things, when they go to an election, Often they'll choose the liberals like Justin Trudeau or the NDP with Jagmeet Singh. They'll kind of choose one of those parties because they're kind of in alignment, right? Although sometimes sometimes the liberals kind of lean a little bit more to the right. So when they're in election mode, they sound very left wing, and then when they get into power, they go a little bit to the right. So they're kind of weird that way. But most Canadians are not super conservative, and so I feel like the conservative movement is kind of slowly dying in Canada, or at least if it's not dying, it has no room to grow. But yeah, I think Canada probably leans just a little to the left, so you'll be in good company. I think the United States kind of leans a little bit to the right, maybe on average. It's one of the things that makes our countries kind of different. But again, it's hard to tell in the U.S. because they're kind of polarizing, right? The Democrats are drifting further left, and the Republicans are drifting further right. Right. So I'm gonna go back up here. Woo.
Yeah, I remember a friend of mine.
Yeah.
So he went to US in his army for just visiting for tourism. So they detained his father for like 8 hours.
They detained him?
Yeah.
Okay.
Guess the reason.
Guess the reason? Wasn't white, or his passport said he was from Iran or Saudi Arabia or somewhere? Where? What?
Just the name.
Huh?
Because of the name.
Just because his name?
Yeah.
What's his name?
It was Muhammad Wahid.
Oh.
That's all the person that they were detained for 8 hours. They let the others go,
Yeah.
but they only detained him.
Yeah, yeah, that's unfortunate, right? Because yeah, there is racial profiling that takes place in law enforcement and in security, right? I remember I didn't think that was the case like years ago, and I had a friend in university named Nabil, and Nabil was he was brown, so I think his ancestry was kind of like Indian subcontinent area, and we were talking about going, on trips, going on airplanes and things like that. And he said, I was like, yeah, I've been searched once, right? When they get you to unpack your luggage, I've been searched once. And he looked at me and he's like, they search me every time, right? Because I forget what Nabil's last name was, but yeah, they saw him, they saw his name, and he gets searched. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. And he's like, yep, every time I get searched. And I was like, that was unbelievable to me at the time, but maybe not so much anymore. So yeah, unfortunately I believe it, but it's not right. Yeah, so these kind of these kind of white supremacists are kind of fighting to preserve their race, right? And I want to just jump ahead here a bit and kind of show you a little bit of a video that I guess gives you a bit of a window into the world of white supremacy, okay? And I'm not really doing this to legitimize their views, because I think they're all bonkers, but it's worth kind of looking at this just to maybe gain a little understanding, maybe. So we talked about that. The other thing that I'll just put up here is this kind of the right and the alt-right, okay? So again, when people are out on the right wing, that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? Some people are conservative, they like tradition, they like low taxes. There's nothing wrong, right? They're not Nazis, right? But as you kind of drift further out, you find that people's views get a little bit more extreme, right? And so when you go to the alt-right or the far right, you start to see people who are kind of anti-feminist, anti-multiculturalism, anti-immigration. Sometimes they're against the media. Sometimes they, have strong racist ideas, whether they're prejudiced against black people or Latinos, or whether they're prejudiced against people from the Middle East, or just anyone, or Jewish people, or just anyone not white. You'll see lots of racism mixed in. You'll see lots of misogyny mixed in, right? So, has anyone heard of incels? Anybody? No. So this is kind of a group of young men who are involuntarily celibate. And so it means that they can't seem to be successful with girls at all. And so they're kind of upset about that. And so there's lots of forums on the internet where these guys will vent their frustration at not being, now you're starting to, vent their frustration at not being successful with women. And so they'll, there's some pretty ugly stuff out there. Again, we have white supremacists and anti-Semites, right? Anti-Jewish prejudice, other racists, and then there's some people who just want to make trouble, right? There's trolls, right? They're just saying things to make people angry because that's what they enjoy doing for some reason, right? So recently we're seeing a rise in the sort of visibility of people on the alt-right, right? Most of these people's views are kind of not entirely socially acceptable, or at least they weren't. And so most people had the good sense to kind of tone it down. But with Donald Trump, they turned it up, right? Because in some of the things that they said, they saw kind of a legitimization of their ideas, right? A reflection of their ideas. We talked about the Ku Klux Klan yesterday, the KKK, the guys in the white hats. The former head of that organization, the Grand Wizard or whatever he's called, when Trump got elected, he said, this is great for us. This is really great that Trump was elected. And he was a huge Trump supporter. And Trump kind of was careful not to say anything about that, like to say anything negative. Like if the head of the KKK, sent me a message and said, "Hey Mike, I think your channel is great. Keep going." I would say, "Get off my channel. I don't want your support. Take a hike," right? Like I would reject his support. I don't want it, right? But Trump never did, right? Trump was happy to have it, I would assume. So these kind of people are become more vocal and more present. And so the video we're going to watch in just a few minutes here in part centers around this. And this probably doesn't look very interesting or exciting to you. Can you read the inscription on it? No, you probably can't. Do you have any idea who this might be? Guy on a horse? Horse guy? Well, in fact, who he is he's General Robert E. Lee, okay? And General Lee was a Confederate general. So in the Civil War, again, the North was fighting the Southern states. Southern states wanted to preserve slavery. The North wanted to end it. And he was one of the generals fighting for the South, right? Fighting for, the right to continue to own slaves. And this statue here is in Charlottesville, North Carolina. Okay, so this is kind of in the center of town. I think there's kind of a big, like a park area in the middle of town. And here is this statue of Confederate General Robert E. Lee. Okay. Now, recently a few years ago, a couple years ago, there was some controversy about whether this statue should remain up, right? Does it make sense to continue to have a statue in the center of town of a guy who fought really hard so that he could continue to engage in human trafficking, right? So he could continue to own and trade slaves and profit from their labor, right? Should we literally put this guy on a pedestal, right? And so people started having the conversation. There was arguments in the city council about, well, maybe we should take the statue down. Maybe it doesn't really reflect what America is or what North Carolina is anymore. But there were some pretty strong reactions to that idea on both sides, right? Some people were very much in favor of taking it down, and some people very strongly opposed the idea. Okay, so what we'll do, again, just to kind of gain a little bit of insight into this, is we're going to watch a short video. It's Vice News are the ones who put it together, and so we'll see a young woman reporter whose name I can't remember. She's going to go out and kind of spend a couple of days with some of these white supremacist guys, and what's happening is that they're protesting the taking down of this statue. Okay, so everything is kind of revolving around that event. Okay. The other thing I'll just caution you to is that the video itself is pretty intense. There's lots of bad language and racial slurs, so I will apologize to you for that in advance. I hope you're not too disturbed by it, but it's kind of how these guys talk, right? Any questions before we dive in? No? Okay. So, online people, the link is in Microsoft Teams with the questions that I would like to ask you. And the questions are these: what kind of ideologies do we hear these white supremacists talking about? So basically what I'm saying is, what do they believe, right? What are the things that they believe are true, right? And what kind of things are they opposing, right? What kind of ideas are they not in favor of? Trump will make a statement. There will be some violence. Actually, a young woman will be killed in the process of these protests, so just be ready for that. You won't see anything, but she will. And Trump made a statement a day or so later about condemning the violence on many sides. Okay, so we'll talk about that idea. Again, why is this statue such a big deal, right? Why is there so much controversy? And the last question, why do you think white supremacists are seeing the world the way they do? Okay, and again, we'll hear a lot about how they see the world, and maybe you can do some psychology and figure out what's going on with some of these guys. Okay? All right, so link is in Microsoft Teams. I'll let you watch the video and then we'll come back here and discuss it. So online people, enjoy. Again, I'm sorry about the bad language. Okay, we'll see you in a bit. Okie dokie. And there it is. Here we go. Also, I think this is 2017 or 2018.
I thought this is the time where they raided the Capitol.
No. No, like in January?
Yeah.
No. That's different event. It's a different white supremacist event. Yeah, this is just maybe 2 or 3 years ago. Okay.
Who drove how long to get here?
12 hours from our car. We've been driving from north of the border, so.
Oh, you came down from Canadistan. If I was doing the radical agenda in Canada, I'd probably be arrested for it, right?
Yeah, well, in Canada, hurting people's feelings is basically illegal. I mean, it's not really criminal, but
Unless they're white males.
So when did you get into, as you said, the racial stuff?
When the Trayvon Martin case happened, you know, Michael Brown and Tamir Rice and all these different things happened, every single case is some little black asshole behaving like a savage, and he gets himself in trouble, shockingly enough. Whatever problems I might have with my fellow white people, they generally are not inclined to such behavior, and you know, you gotta kind of take that into consideration when you're thinking about how to organize your society.
In Oklahoma City.
Okay, so exactly, you have to go back to Oklahoma City to talk about a white act of terrorism,
Roger,
right?
Dylan, Roof.
Okay, so now you've managed to name 3 people, and I'm pretty sure Elliot Rodger wasn't explicitly white, by the way. But the thing is, you remember the names of white bombers and mass shooters, okay? Can you tell me the name of all 19 hijackers on 9/11 off the top of your head? You can remember Dylan Roof's name. You can remember Tim
whether
McVeigh's
white
name.
people were capable of violence.
I didn't say capable. Of course we're capable. I'm carrying a pistol. I go to the gym all the time. I'm trying to make myself more capable of violence. I'm here to spread ideas, talk, in the hopes that somebody more capable will come along and do that. Somebody like Donald Trump, who does not give his daughter to a Jew.
So Donald Trump, but like more racist.
A lot more racist than Donald Trump. I don't think that you could feel about race the way I do and watch that Kushner bastard walk around with that beautiful girl, okay?
Can you talk a little bit about the right adopting the politics or the political style of the left?
We don't have the camaraderie, we don't have the trust level that our rivals do. And that camaraderie and trust is built up through activism, and that is one of the tactics that we're adopting.
So we just saw some rival chants. These are some of the alt-right groups lined up. They're supposedly here to protest the removal of the statue of Robert E. Lee. But they're really here to show that they're more than an internet meme, that they're a big, real presence that can organize in physical space. So the alt-right is very organized. They have a lot of numbers, they have shields, they have protective gear like helmets. We've seen tear gas, water bottles, legs thrown.
Also, just in case you don't know, the flag you can see there, the red one with the two, with the crossed, the two so that's the Confederate flag, and so that was the flag that the South was fighting under in the Civil War, and so you'll still see it used today in the South, although because it's associated with kind of slavery, people are less comfortable using it. But that's the flag you're seeing is the Confederate flag, and the Southern states fought under that flag during the Civil War.
What just happened?
They maced me.
Who?
I don't know. Communist.
Second time in 2 days.
Second time that you fucking do.
You got too big. Fuck. Hell yeah.
Guy, more to drink? More to drink? That is a foundational problem in our society, and whatever you think of my opinions, that's gonna be something that puts you in danger.
Yeah, and that is because this city is run by Jewish communists and criminal niggers. That's exactly what it is.
So you're the true nonviolent protesters.
I'm not even saying we're non-violent. I'm saying that fucking we didn't oppress. We did not initiate force against anybody. We're not non-violent. We'll fucking kill these people if we have to.
Everybody in! Hey, let's get on, let's go.
Do we need more people in here? We've got Vice in here.
Is this the fucking media right here?
Yeah, exactly. Fucking Vice jumped in the fucking van. Open the door, let him out. We gotta kick the media out, we do.
Why don't you tell me what you think?
Huh?
What do you do for the Daily Star?
I am a feature writer. I do the crypto report, and I'm generally their man on the ground in advance.
So, what do you hope to get out of today? Like, what does it mean to you?
Well, for one thing, it means that we're showing to this parasitic class of anti-white vermin that this is our country. This country was built by our forefathers and sustained by us. It's going to remain our country. I believe, as you can see, we are stepping off the internet in a big way. For instance, last night at the Torch Walk, there were hundreds and hundreds of us. People realize they're not atomized individuals, they're part of a larger whole because we have been spreading our memes, we've been organizing on the internet, and so now they're coming out. And now, as you can see today, we greatly outnumbered the anti-white, anti-American filth. And at some point, we will have enough power that we will clear them from the streets forever. That which is degenerate in white countries will be removed.
So you're saying showing up in physical space lets people know that, like, there are more like them.
We're starting to slowly unveil a little bit of our power level. You ain't seen nothing yet.
The state of emergency has been declared, so they shut down the protest in Emancipation Park. They moved this park, McIntyre Park. We don't know if it's going to happen. We don't know if the police will allow them to continue.
Right now we have guys, right now we have people on the ground at the statue with equipment, and they're being told they're not allowed to have a vehicle come through and pick them up, or anybody come and pick them up. I'm about to send at least 200 people with guns to go get them out if you guys do not get our people out. Thank you. Tell them to call me. They have my number.
We had a federal court order that was determined. We had a federal court order to have this rally, and also we had a order that we could have obviously speaking equipment like all. Well, we get in the car. Let's get out speaking permits. They wouldn't even let us hook up our microphones and our speakers because they don't want our speech because we're telling the truth. We're talking about the ethnic cleansing of America and the destruction of the American way of life and a new Bolshevik-style society with no freedom of speech in this country. That's really where we're going in America, and that's got to change. See y'all later. We will be back. Because the governor has declared a state of emergency, so any assemblies are now unlawful. So the left wasn't able to beat us. The left were the boot boys, the capitalist class, the bourgeoisie, and the status quo. So they weren't able to beat us with their armed militant left-wing radicals. So they had to turn to the state. If that doesn't go to show that the radical left, the corporations, and the state are all on the same Jewish side, a moment like this proves it.
Can you tell us a little bit about the organizing tactics you guys have used?
Sure, primarily following the European example of Golden Dawn, the resistance movement, and other organizations that really are the vanguard of nationalist organizing in the world. We have to coordinate over a large area to bring our people together. This is the largest nationalist rally in over 2 decades here in the United States. It's incredibly exciting. And if you look at what's happened, they've had to bring in leftists from around the entire country to try and stop us. And now we're continuing. We're going to keep having a great time, and we're going to keep fighting.
Okay, so things are going to get a little intense here. No, well, they're already intense, right? Things are going to get a little intense here for a minute, so just, prepare yourself.
heard where there are people on the ground being treated by the medics. Were people running up the street screaming and crying. There's many people on the side injured too. It's a really horrific sound.
Hit us just now. There are people, bodies laying on the ground right now. We told city council we did not want them here. They let them come. We told the police we did not want them here. They let them come. I had to jump out of the way. I almost got hit by the car my fucking self. I see bodies flying. I'm getting hit by that car. I see people and blood on the fucking ground. This is my town. We did not want the motherfuckers here. And now we got bodies on the ground and they're trying to revive somebody right now.
The intersection, and I saw people and signs and everything go flying up in the air. I saw the car go backwards up the street, so I know it was a hit and run. And I ran out because they were screaming medic, medic, medic. There was a guy laying on the side, and there was a woman laying there, hardly breathing, and we ended up rolling her over, and she died. And I helped do CPR on her. So.
We condemn in the strongest possible terms this egregious display of hatred, bigotry, and violence on many sides. On many sides.
And so take a few moments to feel the feelings you've got, and if you're a praying person, say a prayer. And if you're not, then connect to a collective unconscious that we all share and that we all feel together, the person who lost their life.
I have a great grandfather who literally has told me the same stories of what I've experienced today. And the fact that I can look at what's going on and see what my grandfather was talking about, it's not scary, but it's appalling. And the fact that we have a president that can come on national TV and go from talking about people were wrong on many sides and not even acknowledging a young lady who lost her life and resolving people who he has notably and knowingly incited is appalling to me. But honestly, I can't say that I'm surprised.
We need you guys at every meeting that's for equality and togetherness and unity. We need everybody to make Charlottesville a real place of resistance.
All the chaos that you've seen today, it's been brewing for quite some time, and I don't think it's ever been about a statue. I think it's been about right is right and wrong is wrong, and that so many people stand for the wrong things happening, and not many of us have came out until it's too late.
Did you see the president's comments when he said that both sides shouldn't be violent?
I thought it was a bunch of nonsense. You know, he stood in one of his rallies when he was running before he was elected and said if they would have did that 40 years ago, they'd have left out on the structure. You okayed this activity. This is the face of supremacy. This is what we deal with every day being African American. And this has always been the reality of Charlottesville. You can't stand in one corner in this city and not look at the master sitting on top of Monticello. He looks down on us. He's been looking down on this city for God knows how long. This is Charlottesville.
It really is a sad day in our constitutional democracy when we are not able to have civil liberties like the First Amendment. That's what leads to rational discussion and ideas breaking down and people resorting to violence.
Alright, so I came pretty well prepared for this thing today. Kel-Tec P3AT, 380 ACP, Glock 19, 9mm, Ruger LC9, also 9mm, and there's a knife. Well, I actually have another AK in that bag over there. You get lose track of your fucking guns, huh? I'd say it was worth it. We knew that we were going to meet a lot of resistance. The fact that nobody on our side died, I'd go ahead and call that points for us. The fact that none of our people killed anybody unjustly, I think is a plus for us. And I think that we showed our rivals that we won't be cowed.
But the car that struck a protester, that's unprovoked.
That's not true, and you know that it's not true. You've seen the video. So
I've seen a video.
Yeah.
I don't know much about it.
I understand
Can
that
you
you're...
describe what the video appears to show?
Okay, so the video appears to show someone striking that vehicle when these animals attacked him again, and he saw no way to get away from them except to hit the gas. And sadly, because our rivals are a bunch of stupid animals who don't pay attention, they couldn't just get out of the way of his car, and some people got hurt, and that's unfortunate.
So you think it was justified?
I think it was more than justified. I can't believe the amount of restraint that our people showed out there. I think was astounding.
What do you think this means for the next alt-right protest?
I say it's going to be really tough to top, but we're up to the challenge.
Wait, why?
Why?
Tough to top. I mean, someone died.
I think that a lot more people are going to die before we're done here, frankly.
Why?
Why? Because people die every day, right? I mean,
Not like of a heart attack, I mean violent death.
Well, people die violent deaths all the time, right? Like, this is part of the reason that we want an ethno state, right? So, like, the blacks are killing each other in staggering numbers from coast to coast. We don't really want to have a part of that anymore. And so, the fact that they resist us when we say, hey, we want a homeland, is not shocking to me, all right? These people want violence, and the right is just meeting market demand.
Okay, so that was intense. You want to take a little break before we come back and talk about that? Okay. Take 10. take 10, and we'll come back and discuss what we've seen, okay? All right, people, and we are back. So, kind of an intense video, right? There's definitely some language in there, and again, I apologize for that, but you know, these guys will not be censored in any way. So quickly, what kind of ideas did we hear these guys promoting? What did they believe in?
They believe that America is the land of their forefathers, who are the white people, and only them.
Yeah.
The people of color, they're like the city that needs to be disposed of.
Right. Yeah. So definitely we're hearing an ideology that thinks of the U.S. as a white nation, right? A nation that was built by white people. And again, there doesn't seem to be a place for non-white people in this country, right? They are, you know, they're labeled with some pretty negative words, and they need to be removed, right? They want Chris Cantwell there. He says they want an ethno-state, right? They want a state that's based on ethnicity, right? They want a white state. Yeah, we hear that. What else do we hear? Other ideologies that show up, or beliefs.
That, I don't know, like for them,
Yeah.
they said, especially black people, they're like savages.
Yeah, so we hear the term savage come up a number of times, right? And he's sometimes referring to black people, sometimes to non-white people, sometimes to the protesters that are, you know, protesting, you know, for equality and, you know, protesting against racism. Yeah, so we hear that term used. What other ideologies or beliefs do we hear about?
Jews are like the first thing they say.
Yeah, yeah.
Jews cannot rule.
Yeah, they won't replace us, right, is what they're kind of chanting at the beginning, right? And so, yeah, again, this is that, you know, that it's again, anti-Semitism or prejudice against Jewish people is very old, right? It goes back hundreds of years. There's also conspiracy theories around Jewish people that they secretly control the world from behind the scenes. Of course, that's ridiculous. The idea that Jews will replace anyone is probably not rooted in reality. I think Jewish people account for 1% of the American population. Maybe it's more. Maybe it's closer to 3. 3% of the U.S. population is Jewish. I don't think they're going to replace anyone, but these guys seem to be concerned. What else? What else do we hear them saying? There's also some references to communism, right? So when that guy gets maced, they're like, "Oh, who maced you?" He's like, "Oh, communists did," right? And so there's kind of a very interesting mix, right, of racism, and then, you know, anti-Semitism, and then kind of anti-communist ideas mixed in. It's all kind of a toxic soup, right? That these guys. What do they oppose? These guys, what are they against? What's that? The government? Yeah, they kind of. Why do you say that? Oh. Sure. So the government, I guess, is in the process of trying to remove that statue, right? So they're protesting against the government. That's true. What else do we hear about the government? What else do we hear about the government? That one guy was saying after the state of emergency was declared and so protests were shut down, he said, "Oh, well, the militant extreme left wing, or whatever he called them, had to side with the state," right? And that showed you that, you know, the state, the corporations, and the left are all on the same, he said, Jewish side. And so again, the poor Jewish people get roped into this again when they're probably thinking, "Hey, leave us out of this. We have nothing to do with it." So, yeah, so I guess there's a little bit of anti-government sentiment too, because that one guy felt that the government was on the side of the corporations, which they are, and on the side of the left, right, on the protesters. I'm going to press pause on this for a second. What else were your thoughts on watching this video? Like, what was your reaction to it?
I mean, like, the violence was quite expected.
It was expected? Okay.
Because, like, protests like these, like, black versus color people, usually takes place.
Okay.
And how he was defending the hit and run, that was also expected because he didn't want to have a bad image of people on the story.
Yeah. Yeah, and how did he explain that, the death of that woman?
If he was just driving down the lane, people should his car.
Yeah, well, it wasn't him, right? Oh, yeah, but it was another guy, right? But yeah, so he explained it away, right? He said, oh, well, this guy felt threatened, and, you know, these stupid people, you know, they just, you know, they weren't smart enough to get out of the way of the car, right? Which is, you saw the footage. Would you have been able to get out of the way? Happened pretty quick, right? And, you know, if you were kind of quick enough to see it, that car hit another car, right? And then that car was pushed forward, right? So I think the odds of anyone seeing that coming are pretty low, right? Like,
I felt like the car, it was called Charger, right?
yeah.
So when I first looked at the car, I felt like Don Toretto was driving.
Yeah. And then after it ran over someone, you were like, oh, maybe not. Yeah. Yeah, so he kind of tried to explain it away, right? And it's, I don't know if you noticed, but it's interesting how he kind of contradicts himself, right? Because he accuses one side of being aggressors and being, you know, savages and you know, and yet his guys are walking around, you know, armed like a militia, right? And
This the part where the guy is talking to the government or something on the phone. He's like, if you don't get our people out, we're gonna send 200 people fully on.
yeah, right. So it's interesting how he accuses the other side of behaving badly, and yet you have these guys that are just, well, you saw in the hotel room, right? Like, he is armed, like he's packing multiple guns at the same time, right? And so, you know, he accuses one side of being, you know, violent and disruptive, and meanwhile, you know, he's got enough guns and ammunition for a small army. They are a small army, right? And so, what else did you kind of think about this video? Like, what was your reaction? No reaction? How can what? Narcissism? Okay. What's narcissism, people? Okay. You think that guy was kind of narcissistic? All of them were?
Yeah, because there's no respect because it's another religion, body.
Yeah.
They think they are better than anything and they can control the world and they can do anything that they think is right.
Yeah. I guess that's true, right? There's maybe a certain amount of narcissism happening, right? Where these guys think that they're right, they think everyone else is wrong, you know, everyone else is, you know, to be derided or hated, or definitely, right? They are, and I think in some ways that's what worries me the most, is that, you know, these guys are, you know, the views that they're putting across are bananas, right? But they do sound very intelligent, some of them, do they not? Not the bald guy, but the guy with the beard who was talking. Like, he sounds like a really educated guy, but the ideas that are coming out of his mouth are just like not connected to reality, right? Like when he says, "Oh, the state and the left and the corporations are on the same Jewish side." It's like it has nothing to do with Judaism or Jewish people at all, right? But it's scary that it sounds so, in some ways he sounds so intelligent, but yet the things he's saying are not connected to reality, right? But the other thing I wanted to point out to you, and I was kind of thinking it in the video, right after the car hit the crowd and the aftermath of that accident, it's not really an accident, but of that. We said at the beginning that race isn't real, right? Genetically speaking, there's one human race, right? We have a few genetic differences that make us look different and give us different colors of skin, but we're all the same, right? Race is a made-up idea, but you can pretty clearly see how made-up ideas can have a pretty significant effect, right? Look at how the people on both sides, look how strongly they believed in their ideas, right? To the point where they were engaging in violence, right? And there was a lot of, emotions were high, people were hurt, people were fighting, and it's a good advertisement, I think, for good critical thinking, right? Because I said when we talked about critical thinking, the beliefs you have are important, right? Because the things you believe to be true have a pretty significant effect on your life. And here we see that very clearly laid out, right? The beliefs that these people have real effects in the real world, right? And so, again, even if there's no kind of biological reality here to connect to, right? We've only got 5 minutes here. Maybe I'll just jump and I'll ask you, although Malika, I think you kind of answered this question already, but that's okay. Why do you think these guys see the world the way that they do? Right? Why do you think they believe the things that they believe? Because what? It's transmitted by their parents, so maybe they learned it from their parents. Okay. What's that? Most of the time. Okay. Okay. So they've been socialized, if you will, right? They've been taught these ideas, right?
What about like the social media as well?
The social media?
Yeah, like the former people like who are white supremacists who are hostile it, reading their tweets and their ideas and their information.
Yeah.
They read that and then they think that that's justifiable, and then they act on it.
Right. We're constantly absorbing social messages from media, right? And I think I brought this up earlier, but we also know that things like Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, they have algorithms that try to show you more of what you've already looked at, right? And so if you start looking at cute cat pictures on Instagram, you're going to find that you get a lot of cute cat pictures coming up in your feed, right? And the algorithm is trying to figure you out. And so, imagine if you're one of these guys looking at lots of white supremacist content. What's going to happen? You're going to get more, right? There's more of this stuff is going to show up in your feed, right? And these people start to consume this media, and the media starts to kind of consume them, right? It feels real because all the time you're seeing messages come up about how white people are under threat and how, ethnic minorities and other races can be blamed for all of the social problems in the US, right? And the idea that if only these people weren't here, you would have this perfect, this perfect country, which of course is completely untrue, right? It's completely untrue. But yeah, people kind of consume these things because of social media, right? Why else do you think they believe the things that they believe? Yeah.
they say it's my it's our right, if we want to just let them to go another way, or we want to show them the right way. You know what I mean? They silence out the beauty things that I think when somebody keeps telling everybody, it's like let's just correct it.
Yeah. Yeah, so they definitely feel that they are correct, right, in their views, and that others are wrong or responsible for these negative things, right? Yeah.
So basically they're narcissistic, as we said,
Basically they're
narcissistic.
we could probably, I don't know if they would fit the clinical diagnosis of that, but we can certainly say there's a type of narcissism here, right, where these guys feel that they are, 100% right, and they're infallible, right? They always do the right thing, and they don't really have any tolerance for criticism or opposing ideas, right? Why else? Why else do you think these guys do what they do? Might also be very interesting to think about the fact that they are pretty much all guys, are they not? I didn't see many women out there protesting with the... Did you see one? Okay. Yeah, just one. Okay, so we saw one woman and hundreds of guys. Why does this seem to be a predominantly male phenomenon, I wonder? Okay, so in a situation where there's a lot of aggression and potential violence, maybe we find men there more often because of the idea that men are more aggressive, right? Anything else? I know we're going to have to end it pretty much right here, but any other kind of last thoughts about what we saw?
They are continuing the ideology of white supremacy over the races. So I think they also carry the ideology of keeping women at home.
Oh. Right.
So that's their ideology.
Right.
That's why we don't see them.
Sure. Could be they have fairly traditional conservative ideas, and yeah, some of those ideas mean that women's place is in the home, right? The men are going off to war. The women don't go to war too, right? The women stay home. And so again, that might explain why we don't see any women marching out there with the white supremacists, right? Okay. That is all the time we have, so I will let you pack it up. I'll see you tomorrow. We'll do a little bit more project work tomorrow. Yeah, but until then, I will see you. Have a nice afternoon.